Hey there everybody, Mazarok here, and today we're going to talk about Detective Imadwagin, Undercover Healer, to answer one question. Why aren't healers queuing up for Mythic Plus pug groups anywhere near as much as they used to? Before we do get into it though, please do like, comment, and subscribe. It goes such a long way towards helping out the channel. There's a Discord link. If you're interested in becoming a patron, this is going to be an extremely early access video for my patrons because I'm going to be releasing this in succession, parts 1, 2, and 3, in 3 days. In 3 straight days, because like I said, this is undercover, so I'm trying to not publicize this publicly, but we're going to be putting all my findings up on for my patrons really early. There's a Discord link, a Twitch link, and a merch link, all of that fun stuff down below. Alright, so Undercover Healer, what is the goal? To find out why healers are not playing Mythic Plus or pugging Mythic Plus as much as they used to. Now, if you've been playing this game anywhere near as much through Shadowlands, through Dragonflight, you have definitely noticed in pug groups, unless you are a healer, a specific lack of healers. In Shadowlands, I would go and look at the pug queues, and it would be 1 healer, 3 DPS waiting for a tank. That's quite literally what it was. All of the time. Of course, you do, general rule, right? Like, most groups, that's what it was. In Season 1 of Dragonflight, that started changing, though. I started noticing more groups that had 1 tank and 3 DPS. In Season 2, I've actually waited 10-15 minutes for a healer to queue to do a dungeon. And that's any healer. Why? When I asked my YouTube, and this is a very biased poll, by the way, because I'm primarily a tank Mythic Plus content creator, if healers preferred to do Raid or Mythic Plus as their primary form of content, as of recording this, it is 68% Mythic Plus and 32% Raid. But where are the healers? So we decided that I would gear up my evoker, which was already slightly geared, but we would do keys. I changed my name. I don't have Maz in the title. I've unlinked my Raider.io. In some of these instances, I've linked it in others for different reasons, which we'll get into. We'll get into it as we go along. And we would solely pug keys. No one allowed from chat. No one, no friends, no friend help, nothing like that. I would go in and pug keys. But before we did this, we had to theorize why healers aren't coming. So I asked my chat, I asked my Discord, I asked healer friends that I knew, what are the reasons that healers do not want to pug Mythic Plus content? And we had got a variety of reasons. One of them is affixes are relegated to healer problems. A very common thing was toxic environments towards the role. Little things like this is healer gets blamed for any and all issues, toxic about healer DPS, won't stop for mana breaks. But we also had some other ones. High HPS checks are incredibly difficult. Players do mechanics. Players don't do mechanics or utility, only Unga, which is my stream's code for I don't care about anything else but my DPS. So when you hear Unga, that's what that means. Players don't use defensives, players don't use off-healing abilities, and community knowledge or a lack thereof were some of the big reasons that everyone came up with in a pool. So I went into Mythic Plus and decided, let's go. Let's find out what's happening. So, like I said in the little Patreon portion of this is actually going to be 3 separate videos. So we have started in the Tyrannical. All of my IO right now, I had done a couple devastation keys, and I literally mean a couple. So I had very little IO, but that was all on a Tyrannical week. So I said, all right, so all of the thoughts and end theories or whatever for this video are all from Tyrannical week in low keys, 6 to 14-ish, around that bracket. Next week is Fortified. We are going to do this again in the same level of bracket, trying to get up to 15 to 16s and see what happens. See if the theories that we talk about at the end of this video are still true, relevant, or, whatever. The third portion of this is going to be the 17 to 20 range, if I can get enough gear and actually do it. So it's going to be 1 week Tyrannical, 1 week Fortified, and then 2 weeks of 1 week Fortified and 1 week Tyrannical for one last portion together and see what happens. Now, this is a very small sample size. This is, of course, North America, but we really kind of wanted to see what happens. So, I start pugging into Mythic Plus, and we start with a 7 Brackenhide Hollow. And immediately, I am the problem. I didn't realize, I've never bought a name change before, that when you buy a name change, things like click, remove all of your keybinds, which led to this incredible moment. Oh no, I'm gonna have to click this whole fight! Bro, use... Fuck, he got deleted! And I started scuffing the key pretty horribly. It was not fun. It was super funny, but whatever. Once I got my keybind situation figured out, we continued on with the key. Now, the results for this one are slightly skewed because, as Twitch viewers are, one of them snuck into the key well knowing I was in it. And I didn't notice because I didn't know that person's name, and they ended up carrying the key. Now, without this person, there was no way we would have timed this at all. But we do have a couple of things to talk about. Number one, the tank's active mitigation was incredibly low, and I was having to babysit that person to death. 14% uptime on Iron Fur, and they came in with like a heroic route in mind. So it was kind of things to move along. And they really didn't take to direction that well. They just wanted to do whatever they wanted to do and didn't really listen to the group very much. But we were also being trolled a little bit by the Twitch viewer that just, you know, was egging that tank on. So that's a thing. Like I said, these results for the first key are a little skewed, but we did learn a lot. The other players did not use defensives, did not do any mechanics, and everything was relied on me and the high DPS player to get this key done. We ended up timing it. Luckily, I would have taken the blame for it for the keybind thing. That's totally on me. It was... When I realized what happened, I felt like an idiot. Like, really. But we got it all figured out. And we kind of move along. Up next, we go into an 11 Vortex Pinnacle and an 11 Underrot. Now, here's where we learn one thing in particular. A lot of overgeared players sign up for this level of content because they're Wormcrest farming. So those two keys were actually incredibly easy. We had 1 or 2 overpowered people and an overpowered tank, like item level 430, 445, you know, 430, 435, trying to farm up some Wormcrests. There was nothing to heal. It just... We decided to start staying away from those keys. Plain and simple, too many people are coming in, and we're not going to learn anything from this experience. So we decided to go stay 10 and below at this point, or 13 and higher, because a lot of these keys are going to get 2-chested, right? Those 11 keys are going to get 2-chested by those people coming in and carrying Wormcrest farming. Then they're going to try and run those keys, and those overgeared people will most likely not be there. So we ended up in a 10 Halls of Infusion, and we did have a slight bit of community knowledge lacking from the tank, who immediately went left on pole, even though the shaman... DPSer was like, yo, why are you going? No, don't go right, go right. And the person just straight up didn't listen and did whatever they wanted. We ended up timing the key, no problem, no deaths, no wipes, and it went okay. Like, not a problem. But that is something to note, which we're going to be theorizing a little bit later on. Then we went into a 9 Neltharian's Lair, no issues. And then we start getting into some of the more fun stuff a little bit later on. We get into... an 11 Neltharis, which was an Insecute. By the way, Insecute, I did not have to wait around for a key as a healer. Literally, I'm on my Preservation Evoker. I'm not being looked at. They're just taking me because I'm a healer. It's crazy. Fell apart before it even started because the hunters didn't even want to show up to the key. They just were world questing or something, doing something, and they kept saying wait, and it was like 10 minutes, tank left. So we signed up for an 11 Brackenhide Hollow. Which was definitely fun. It was not a problem. We timed it. Insta-Q. There was a priest DPSer and a paladin tank. And both of them had their dispel, and neither one of them disease dispelled anything once. So it was kind of like, what? Okay, cool, whatever. I've got it. I have a 1-minute disease dispel. Don't worry, guys. There's only 5 of these out there. I've got it. Fun. Then we get a nice jump up into a 14 Neltharian's Lair. Now this is finished and untimed. This is the first untimed key of this week, and how this kind of moves along and goes. Tank pulls everything along the way. Literally everything along the way. At item level 420 at the time, and does not realize that the two of the DPS that are there do not do enough damage for this size of pull, but is not paying attention to frontals at all, is aiming the big frontals from the rock guys at me, which I died promptly to. I tried healing myself through it, but when there's just so many things going on at once, and you're taking damage from 7 different sources, unfortunately you just can't stay alive, and he's just twirling around like an acrobat. You're kind of just stuck there. But he was a good tank at keeping himself alive. Non-arguably, he did it the entire time, but he just kept pulling like nobody else was around him. Like he was just pulling for an open world quest. And throughout the experience, that's all it was. And people were not paying attention to frontals, giving me way too much to heal, because I'm having to heal the regular damages going out on top of people standing in avalanches, in multiple avalanches, because he pulls 3 breakers at the same time, and it just added so much. And I was getting a little tilted, and then once we got to Dargul, I could not do the Strike of the Mountain. I was dying every time. I thought I was out of it. I was never out of it, and it was just me being tilted, playing even worse on a spec that I don't really super know yet. I'm not a Preservation Evoker Scientist. I main 6 tanks, man. Like, that's what I do. So having to play a character which I have to learn healer positioning and preservation healer evoker positioning is adding an extra layer to this, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, I need to say that. But then we get to next, the Worm Boss. This is a highlight for me. I ended up at 84k HPS by the end of this fight. I kept everyone alive with, I think, only 1 death towards the end, but that's quite literally just unfortunate. But man, that rush, that adrenaline, that's pure fire. Being able to do that at the item level that I was, we started this, by the way, at item level 413. We're now currently at the end of this week, 420, and we're waiting on vaults, so the next week should go a little bit better, a little bit worse, we'll see. But that was an insane high. But then the Unga continues. We're in a 14, and we have 2 DPS doing 30, 35k overall, and we have a tank doing 26, pulling like he's doing 80. And it's unfortunate where I just couldn't keep up in many scenarios, and I was losing myself in panic. Some of that can be relegated to being new to the spec, which absolutely true, but some of it is just like, why are you pulling all this? There's no need. But we theorized that they saw some sort of, big streamer pulling like that in his 20 group, and thought that every pug does this in the world. We call it the MDI effect, where you see the MDI and say, oh man, they pull all of this directly to the boss. I can too, not realizing how much work actually goes into that, by the way. Like, an organized group setting has something called a kick rotation, a stop rotation, and tons of hours practicing together, where they brick these keys trying to find the perfect way to do it. And then you're asking 4 pugs that you never met, not in comms, to do this route? I don't know what you're thinking. Like, honestly, that kind of blows my brain. But, whatever, we keep going. 12, Alderman is up next. All around solid, not a problem. Some people, some weird choices in the tanking due to a lack of community knowledge, but the tank was very receptive to feedback when we were saying, like, hey, no, go here instead, or do this or that. They're like, oh, okay, cool, not a problem. Timed, cool, went really good. 12 Nelthars, more problems. So we had low DPS in a 12 Neltharis, and the tank rage quit during the Mag Mammoth boss. Key burnt. He ult F4. We don't know if it's an actual DC, but we're just all assuming he left. 13 Nelthars. Bricked. Tank runs in, pulls the entire room, the whole thing. One kick gets missed, molten core. All of the little rock guys, everything starts exploding. We wipe. Tank leaves the group. The 3 other DPS with me were like, oh, again? Great. This is my first experience with this, because I am a tank, and I don't do that. So, yeah, that's fun. And then lastly, we get into a 12 Neltharis, which is an all-around solid group, and all of these were insta-queued. Had a good time. Now, we're going to take this is a small sample size, so we're not going to come up with the theory. We're not going to end with, these are exactly my findings, but we are going to end up with some theories around and how I felt, because after some of these dungeons, I know exactly why. Like, I felt so dead sure I knew exactly why. Tanks, you hold a lot of healer's sanity in your playstyle and your skill. You do. When you act like an idiot, there is a healer literally yelling at a monitor, trying to figure out what you're doing, why you're doing anything that way, and most likely why you're not kicking or stopping anything, because that seems to be a common factor when people pull the whole room. They don't care about anything else. Just look at my deeps, and don't try and stop anything. Don't think of any consequences as to who's kicking stuff, who's stopping stuff, who's doing anything. And when I got these tanks, man, I seriously did not want to heal. I did just wanted to leave the group. But I stuck with it, get a key done, go in, and ask myself, is this every tank? Now, we didn't run that many keys, and this happened multiple times. We're in the double-digit percentages here, right? That's not fun. But another thing that's also lacking here that I noticed is all of my runs where I didn't quite know what's going on was a lack of community knowledge within the player base itself. Players not using defensives, but people not knowing some basic routes, some basic stops, some basic kicks. Kind of just the things that you expect people to pick up along the way during a season. Now, this is only 4 or 5 weeks into the season. I think we're, week 5? End of week 5. So, there is a slow it takes time for community knowledge to embed itself. If we look at Shadowlands, who had 3 seasons of the exact same dungeons, right? We had The Other Side, Mist of Tyrannus Scythe, Spires of Ascension, Necrotic Wake. You know, we had the same dungeons for so long. That community knowledge built up from so many people in such a big collective. But you still had people in Season 3 that had no idea what was going on there, that you saw that had I.O. from Season 1 and 2, and this is because the community is a little bit slow to learn. And this is something I've noticed as a tank. It takes time for things to embed themselves. It takes time, and a lot of it, for things to kind of work in and gel. And the thing is unpredictability is a healer's worst nightmare. That's one of the first things I noticed. In a raid setting, you know exactly when the ramps are coming, you have timers coming down to when the big abilities are coming, and aside from maybe light, standing, and stupid, you're not going to have to critically heal that much. But in Mythic Plus, that is the complete opposite. While there are some timed events that you know you have to plan around and heal, a lot of things to heal are just from people standing in dumb. People standing somewhere they shouldn't. Bad things just happening because of a mispull or whatever, and that unpredictability is really not great for a healer, right? Now, it can be really, really fun to, you know, push through and heal that and kind of go through that. There is a rush there. But if the entire dungeon is like that, that tends to drain on a person's mind. Like, oh my god. It tends to just kind of flush out the crazy and just jottle and rustle up everything in there, right? If you look at the MDI polls, great push polls, everything like that, they've practiced these keys. They know every single little bit of things that are going to happen along the way, just how much more quicker can they do them. When you're in a pug group, that is completely different. And the tank holds I'm going to repeat this. The tank holds so much of the healer's sanity in their hands. From having to know this community knowledge, to knowing their tank and spec, to using defensives properly, to knowing routes, to just knowing. A good tank that knows the routes and knows exactly what's happening when it's happening and can help the healer with proper defensives and off heals and dispels or whatever, it literally makes a run infinitely easier. And when that isn't happening and the healer has to make up for every mistake the DPS and the tank make, and there are a lot of them, that can get to be a little overbearing. And to me, I was like, if this are what the runs are going to be like for the rest of the day, I'm done. That's quite literally something I've said. I'm done if this is what it's going to be like for the rest of the day. Now, luckily for me, I would join a different key, and it would go great. You know, you get the opposite. You know, maybe a little bit of lack of community knowledge, or, you know, a little bit less unga, but you'd have 1 or 2 people helping, and that would help me infinitely. Well, I kind of go through the learning process of this as well, right? Just because I know all these dungeons as a tank does not mean I know all these dungeons as a healer, which is that next point. If you can, play a different role. Try and see what it's like on the other side. Because there are a lot of things about these dungeons that I actually had no idea about. Because it didn't affect me. Right? There are some things where it's obvious that it's affecting the party and I need to know what they are so I can help. But there are some minute things, some subtle things that I learned about in each dungeon where I was like, huh, that's how that works from this side. Huh. And honestly, that's going to make me a better tank because of it. Even if it's a low-level key, try it out. You might be surprised. You might be surprised. As for low-level Tyrannicals, they are what they are. Right? You've got people learning dungeons, which is absolutely fair. That's learning levels. 6, 7s, you're still learning mechanics. You're not seeing mechanics in a 2. You're learning these mechanics along the way. And that's where it is. But that's also where the healer gets punished the most. If you're a new healer and you don't know your ramps and you don't know what's going on and you're learning these mechanics for the first time and you already need to be ramping 2-3 seconds ago and it's too late, right? Let's say you're in a 6 or 7 and you're with people similar item level as you. You're all item level 395, 400, right? You're in trouble. And all of that learning is hardest on the healer. Much harder on the healer. So those are the first few things I've learned this week. Tanks, you hold so much of the healer's sanity in your hands. It's actually crazy. Actually crazy. Community knowledge, which is going to be a topic for another video, by the way. We are going to be discussing the impacts of community knowledge with the new dungeon rotation system that Blizzard has done, right? Because we're going to have 8 new dungeons next season as well. Maybe some returning ones, whatever, you know, whatever. But we're going to talk about the impact of that in a different video. But how community knowledge, or the lack thereof, can truly affect a healer and their capability to heal. Some stuff you just can't heal. You just can't. Right? But on an end note here, remember how I said toxic environment towards role? No one was toxic. That was one of the first things many healers said to me, is people are so toxic towards the role. Now, we have a very small sample size. We've done low-level keys at Tyrannical only. So this is something I'm going to leave open, because I think this is a problem that's going to be generated more in the 17 plus range, so we will wait. But it is good to note that in the few keys that I've done, and by the way, I found this actually kind of so fun to an nth degree that I been secretly doing healer keys on my own just to see if I can get anything out of it. You know, just some extra knowledge, some insight, whatever. I've done a couple since the stream. Oops. But no one was toxic to me. Even when I failed miserably as a healer in a 13 or 14 and something was on me, no one was toxic. But I'm also accountable for my actions. When I screwed up, I said, my bad, sorry, won't happen again. Is that enough? Should we try staying silent whenever I screw up or I don't heal someone and just not say a thing? I don't want to be I don't want to start being toxic to have toxicity be returned in my favor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to bait it. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to egg anyone on. But I do want to know no one was toxic. That's a really big plus sign for the community. But we are going to see. Like I said, there are 2 more parts to this. We're going to be doing Fortified next week, and then we're going to be doing Fortified and Tyrannical as 2 weeks combined, and we're going to try to be healing 17s and pluses to try and get into that bracket to see where everything is, right? See what goes on and experience everything. So, we are streaming these, by the way, so come on by, see me stream. There are some ridiculous clips and some ridiculous moments already. But what do you guys think? Have I been hitting the nail on the head here? Are some of my theories correct? Are some of them completely wrong? Like I said, these are theories. We have our document, and we're putting everything out. And these are the things that I've noticed so far. But we also have 3 more weeks of this. So kind of, let's see what happens, right? Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have yourself a good one.